Hi there, and welcome to the Meadows Church Online. Hopefully you've already gotten used to this platform, but welcome if this is your first time today. We're so glad you joined us online. First, want to just go over a few announcements and just let you know what's happening in the next couple weeks. Easter is next Sunday. It's crazy to think it is already upon us. Now with this COVID-19 situation, things have changed. People are canceling events, but no one can cancel Easter. And so what we want to do is not cancel it, but in 2020, things are going to look very different. We're going to do our first ever online Easter service. We still want to invite our neighbors. We still want to invite the community around us, but to join us online. We have a lot of special things planned for that, and hopefully it will be roughly around an hour long. It's going to be, again, Sunday, April 12th at 10 a.m., and you can find that on our website, or you can just type in your web browser, themeadows.online.church, and we'll see you there. But also, for our people at the Meadows Church, I have a special request for you that I want every single person in our church to do. And so if you're watching this, hopefully this is then for you. This is something I want all of us to do as a simple way to celebrate Easter, especially for our neighbors. What I want you to do is to get out your camera, or probably most likely your phone, or even your tablet, and I want you to record a 15-20 second clip of yourself and your family, and we're going to send out to you by email exactly kind of what we want you to say. And then what you'll do is you'll send those back to me. You can text it or email it, and we're going to put together a big video especially for our Easter service, of just every single person in the church. We want their faces to come together. I'm sure you're tired of just seeing my face alone on the screen, and so we want to do that for you. And you know what? We have a beautiful family who's already made a sample video for you to watch, which is exactly what we're looking for you to do as well. Here, take a look.
Hi everyone! I have seen the Lord. He has risen. Happy Easter from the Meadows Church.
And then as always, we don't just focus on Sunday morning. The church exists not just on Sunday, but every day. And so we want to just encourage and emphasize, again, stay connected throughout this week. Our missional communities, we have two, are meeting on Wednesday night and also Thursday night, and they're doing this by Zoom. So thank you for joining us this morning, and we hope that today in our service, through music, through preaching, that you would feel the presence of God, even though you might be with your family or even alone watching this at home. Feel free to use the comment section, chat, let us know you're here. Just type it in, say, hey, the Melvins are here to worship God together at the Meadows, and we just want to hear from you. So hopefully you have a great day.
Good morning, the Meadows Church. JD here, your worship pastor. I'd like to start this morning by reading to you from Psalm 18, where David is in distress, but he is looking to the Lord for help. Let us read. And David here says, I love you, Lord. O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress, my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge. My shield, the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. Let us call upon the name of the Lord this morning, church. Let us sing together. Surrounding me, let it break. At your name, still, call the sea to still, the rage in me to still, every wave. At your name, Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. on the name of the Lord. One more time, sing Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, you made the darkness true. Jesus, Jesus, silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you made the darkness true.
Happy Palm Sunday, everybody. This is the Sunday before Easter, and so Easter is upon us. It doesn't feel like it with everything going on, but happy Palm Sunday. We're definitely looking forward to this week of celebration of Jesus' death and resurrection, but also Easter this upcoming Sunday. It's hard to believe, but this is our 4th Sunday in a row using this format, being online. Definitely unique, but I think we're getting a little bit more used to this as we go. I wanted to begin our message today just asking a question. Hopefully it's an honest question, and maybe even with you being at home, you can be a little bit more honest with yourself as well. But how stressed are you? What kind of level of stress, not necessarily worry and anxiety, but stress, that tension that you feel, how stressed are you right now? I know for myself, some days I feel fine, some days I do feel stressed out. And you know what, for me, I think the best way to figure out kind of our stress levels is to look at our extremes. Don't necessarily look at when we're, just coasting, we're on the couch or watching TV. Look at it more in the times of the extremes, of maybe when your kids get you upset, or maybe something that happens at work, or maybe you see something on the news. Those extremes of going from maybe really happy to really angry to be really sad. Like, what are those extremes like? I think in times of stress, we see a lot more of those extremes take place. We see a lot more of those ups and downs. We see those ups be a lot more up and those downs be a lot more down. And so for yourself, how stressed are you? I think it's a common question that people are asking, people are wrestling with, that even for ourselves we're concerned about. We shouldn't be this stressed, and we definitely don't like what it looks like when we are stressed. And yet, for us as Christians, we have peace that surpasses all understanding. And that is exactly what we're going to look at today as we continue on in our series in the Gospel of John. We're going to see that Jesus is offering us something that our world, especially right now, desperately desires. And so as Christians, we should, first off, give thanks to God for this, practice it, actually utilize this peace. But then third, as well as encourage those around us who do not have this peace to give it to them, to offer it to them. In the same way that, we might call up a friend or a neighbor and check in to say, hey, do you have enough groceries, or do you have enough food or toilet paper or whatever it may be? And then we're ready there to offer it to them. Jesus is also doing that for us. We are in need not just of food, but of peace. And so Jesus gives it to us, and we can give it to others. And so please open up your Bibles today. You can also use the comment section on the side here for two things. One, to check with the Bible, and you can look up the reference right there. But also, as we're trying to encourage more and more, use it as for questions, use it for comments, use it to share Scripture, and utilize it as much as you possibly can to create more of that community feel that we are missing. So open it up there to John chapter 16. We're going to be looking at verses 25 to 33. And so let's read this and apply it to our own hearts as we really examine our own lives, and not just asking the question, are we stressed? But then how do we deal with it? How do we deal with that tension? Let me read. Verse 25, it says this. It says, I have said these things to you in figures of speech. This is Jesus speaking. The hour is coming when I will no longer speak to you in figures of speech, but will tell you plainly about the Father. In that day you will ask in my name, And I do not say to you that I will ask the Father on your behalf, for the Father loves you, because you have loved me, and believe that I came from God. I came from the Father, and have come into this world. And now I am leaving the world and going to the Father. His disciples said, "Ah, now you are speaking plainly, and not using figurative speech. Now we know that you know all things, and do not need anyone to question you. This is why we believe that you came from God." Jesus answered them, "Do you now believe? Behold, the hour is coming, indeed it has come, when you will be scattered, each to his own home, and will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, for the Father is with me. And I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world." And so what's happening here? We see exactly in verses 25 to 28, Jesus kind of describing this situation. He's telling his disciples that he's about to leave this world. He's about to leave and then return. Now his disciples aren't really fully grasping what that means. Where is Jesus going? Like, how is he, have plans to leave them, who they've, been with his disciples for the last 3 years? Where is he planning on going? How is he going to get back? They're still trying to figure this out. But for us, who knows the full story, who knows what's happening next week at Easter, we know that Jesus, when he says that he's going to leave his disciples, it means that he's going to die. That he's literally going to leave everything and everyone. That he's going to pass away. Again, in the storyline, it is happening the next day, the very next day. That he gets arrested and pulled away from his disciples. They scatter, and then he dies. But then, as Jesus also promises, he's not just leaving, but then he's going to return. And he returns to us in the glorious resurrection, and coming back to life. And is at that point in time where he says, again, he's going to make things even more clearly to his disciples. And so for Jesus, this is an extremely stressful time for him. He knows what's going to happen. He knows that the death is before him. He knows this is his last moments here on earth. And yet he is spending them doing exactly what God had told him to. Jesus didn't let fear or stress take him away from what God had asked him to do. I couldn't imagine being in that situation knowing that the next day I was going to die. Already we are in great fear of the potential of dying from COVID-19. Right? Are we going to get it? What is that going to mean for us? Are we going to pass away? And even that begins to put stress and pressure on us. Is a loved one going to pass away? Is a neighbor going to pass away? Who is this virus going to take down? And that begins to build up the stress. That begins to build up the anxiety. And yet for Jesus, it wasn't a maybe we'll catch this disease. It wasn't a maybe I will, overcome it or not. It is I will die. I will leave the disciples. But Jesus is also confident that he will return. And he says here again that it is a good thing. It's a little bit of strange English here, and although Jesus didn't speak it in English before, but a weird kind of translation to English for us. Where he says, in verse 26, kind of along the lines, he says, you will no longer need to ask in my name, but simply you can just ask the Father directly. And so this is the thing that we cannot miss here. That Jesus is telling us that his leaving is a good thing. His leaving, and therefore, as we come to know, his dying is a good thing. That for his disciples, although they will go through suffering, although they go through difficult times, whether we will be stressed, Jesus says that in the end, it will be good for us. Now, we won't have to go to Jesus to ask for things from the Father. Now, we will just ask the Father, and Jesus will already bridge that relationship with us and God again. And so this is a very beautiful thing that Jesus is telling us Again, the leaving is going to cause us stress, but the return is what we rejoice in. And so as Jesus demonstrates for us, the suffering actually brings about good. That Jesus has been clear about this message all along, that he will have to die, that there's a purpose for it, that there's a reason for it, that he has to die so that we might be saved. So that through his substitutionary atonement, through his own death, he gives his life so that we can be set free. Jesus, who is the perfect one, the holy one, the one who is appointed by God. It is by his death, his sacrifice, that he makes a way for us to be connected here with the Father. And so even in this kind of words, before the crucifixion happens, Jesus is again reminding his disciples to say, even suffering, God uses for good. And Jesus knew that. That's why he continued on the path. Jesus knew that although leaving was going to cause pain, tears, suffering unto death, he still saw the other side. He still trusted that the Father would use it for his good. And so even in this first section here, do not forget during our time here that suffering, God uses suffering to bring about good. Again, it's hard to see. It's hard to fathom at times. There's still significant events in my life that I still look back on and say, well, yeah, God brought good out of it, but I don't really know how much good. I don't really know if the trade-off was worth it. But there is a trust that God is sovereign over all things. And therefore, if evil things happen, if suffering happens, God will use it for his good and for his glory. Look at the second section here of the passage. His disciples kind of yell out. They're excited. They say, wow, Jesus is no longer using figurative speech. Like, they're excited. And then it says they make two key claims here. Again, it doesn't credit a specific disciple. It just kind of tells us the disciples in general. And so they make two claims here about Jesus. They say in verse 30, it says, now we know that you know all things. That's claim number one. And they believe that Jesus knows everything there is to know. And second, they say this is why we believe that you came from God. So the two things, they believe that Jesus knows all things and that Jesus too has access to God the Father. And so even in this way, we begin to realize that the disciples are getting closer and closer to realizing the truth, which is the bedrock of Christianity, is that Jesus is in fact God in the flesh. That he has divine knowledge, he knows all things that only God can know. And two, that he has access to God the Father, that he can be equivalent with God. And so in this exact same way, the disciples are getting closer and closer to believing this. But it's interesting. Look at verse 31. It says, Jesus answered them, do you now believe? There's a question mark on there. Do you now believe? And so even Jesus here is interesting enough. He's questioning their belief. He's questioning, do you really believe that I am God? Do you really believe that I know all things? Do you really believe that I am the one and the only one who has access to God the Father and the presence of God? Do you really believe that? Now that's interesting. I think many of us would not want to question people's belief. If they claim that they believe in Jesus, we try to just accept that. And yet Jesus here himself is questioning his own disciples. Do you really believe that? And I think the reason is it comes in verse 32. Jesus knows that although they might be feeling it or believing it a little bit in their minds and maybe in their hearts, their actions do not prove that their beliefs are true. Let me say that again. Their actions or their future actions do not prove that their beliefs are true. Look at verse 32. Jesus says, behold, the hour is coming, and indeed has come. Right? Jesus has been talking about this, that this time is coming where he is going to be taken from them, that he is going to die, that he is going to leave them, and now he's saying that time is now. And it says, when you will be scattered, each to his own home, and will leave me alone. That's funny. When I first read that, I couldn't help but just think of the similarities that we are in right now as a church, or even as a world. We've all been scattered. We've all been sent back to our homes. Now, that was not necessarily a choice of our own. We were trying to live out what the government has asked us to do to provide safety to everybody. But in here, the disciples did it out of sinfulness. They did it out of selfishness, of self-preservation, of hiding themselves from Jesus, and potentially then the consequences that exist for following Jesus. And even in the same way, we can still, in this crisis, do the same thing. We could push ourselves away. We can isolate ourselves. We can put our heads in the sand and just wait for this to pass. We can go too far above and beyond and say, I won't even bring groceries to my neighbors, or I won't even go and ask them what to do. I'm too scared or even too stressed out to be able to think of those things. Or maybe we go even further than that. Maybe we say that we're so focused on just gaining money and making sure that we have money to meet our bills, and we're so just stressed out and worried about that we forget to interact with those in the church. We forget to ask how other people are doing. Maybe we even forget our own kids. Again, stress does a lot of things to us, but what I personally believe is that stress reveals the cracks that were already there in our lives. It reveals to us who we truly are. And I'll give you an honest answer, is that is not a pretty picture. None of us are beautiful on the inside. None of us have it all together. None of us are like Christ. And so when stress takes place, we begin to see those darknesses that we hide deep down inside. We begin to see them being exposed. You put anybody under pressure, and you'll see truly who they are. That's what they often say about professional athletes, isn't it? That it's when the playoffs hit, or when the tough times come when it comes to the sporting games, when there's a game that they absolutely need to win, do those stars shine bright, or do those stars fall away and just look like a regular player? Right? In the same way, stressful times reveal to us where our character truly is. You know this, especially when you're around your friends or your families, or especially acquaintances, people that don't really know you that well. It's easy enough to put up a facade, right? It's easy enough to put up a perspective of the way we want people to see us. But you know what? It's our spouses and our kids that know our true character. And why? Because they see us in stressful times. And so in the same way, the disciples are about to, in the next day, go through one of the most stressful times of their lives up to this point in time. And their true character and their true belief begins to show. That although they are starting to understand who Jesus is, they themselves don't truly believe it. And not only will difficult times reveal to us our character, but also reveal to us our beliefs. And many of us at this point in time, it is showing exactly what we truly believe in. Do we believe in the sovereignty of God? That God is in control over all things? Do we believe that God truly loves us? And that the problems that we are facing, He cares about? Do we believe that God is powerful? That He is able to solve the problems that we are facing? That He is able to overcome COVID-19? Are we believing that Jesus Himself is there for us, that He has died for us, that we can pray to God, that He hears us, that He answers us? These stressful times will reveal to us how actual authentic our beliefs are. We even see this in our culture, where the foundation of our society is being shaken. What is deemed essential versus not essential is becoming very clear. People who thought they were important are deemed to be no longer important. And even in that way, the stress, this pressure is putting our society under this immense time of rethinking what is valuable in life. And so in the same way, the disciples are doing this, but here is the key transition here, where Jesus begins to tell them, this is what you are going to do under stress, but this is how Jesus is going to act, which is the complete opposite. He says, again, they're going to run away from him. They're going to leave him alone. And then it says, yet I am not alone, for the Father is with me. And so Jesus sets for us a key example. That he says, you will leave me alone. Everyone will desert me. I will be hanging on that cross alone with no one around me to support me and care for me. But yet, Jesus is alone, but not lonely. And so even here, Jesus gives us this confidence that says, hey, you will desert me, but Jesus will stay faithful to the end. He will prove to us time and time again that he is the Holy One. He is the one who follows God perfectly. And so although he is alone, he says that, I'm never alone. The Father is with me. And that is the key power that motivates Jesus, that keeps Jesus going to the end. Because you know what? The key difference here is belief. The disciples claim to believe that God exists and God is with them. But when stressful times come, it proves to be false. But Jesus claims that the Father is with him. And it is that motivation that does carry him to the end. And so Jesus sets us an example to follow, but it's not just about following his example. He gives us the power to do so. Continuing on, he says this in verse 33. He says, I have said these things to you, and here it is, that in me you may have peace. And so here Jesus is offering, not just his disciples, but you and me, our neighbors, our world, this beautiful power. Again, not just an example to follow, although we do follow Jesus' example, but he also gives us power. He says peace is possible, but only in the person of Jesus. Right? This is very clear for us. People are offering different ways to deal with stress. You've maybe seen articles, you've maybe seen the news talking about how do we handle stress. And there's some very practical ways that are helpful in all these ways. God gives us wisdom to do. But at the heart of it, Jesus says that we can have peace in him. Now there's this power that only dwells, it only comes from the person of Jesus. It's not in the words of Jesus. It's not in the example of Jesus, but in the person of Jesus. And so he gives us this power, and we have to dive a little bit deeper into understanding then how do we get that? Like, what does it mean to tap into that power that is in the person of Jesus? Well, look at this. Again, I think it's in Jesus' final words here. It says, in the world you will have tribulation. I just want to stop there. Jesus promises us that we're going to have troubles. And not just any kind of troubles, but tribulation, right? Like deep, stressful, difficult times. The world is going to shake like it is shaking now. Jesus promised that these times were going to come. It's not just simply to say that all things will be fine and we'll get through it and you won't suffer much. Like Jesus tells us straight up that we will go through times of tribulation. Don't forget that. This was not a surprise to Jesus. He warned us about this. And not only this, but we will continue to go through times of tribulation even after COVID-19 is all done with. We will constantly have tribulation. Right? Jesus doesn't take us out of the way of suffering, but here he actually guides us through suffering. He says, but, so you will go through tribulation, but take heart, or be confident, or have peace, because I, that is Jesus, have overcome the world. Jesus says to us that yes, this world is difficult. Yes, this world is filled with suffering. Yes, we will go through difficult times as a world, as a people, as a person. Your family will go through difficult times. He tells us that. But have courage, because Jesus, not us, Jesus has overcome the world. And so this is where the power comes from. It is to say that we are going to be found in him, that we're going to put our trust in him, that we're going to see what he's about to do in this leaving and returning. And it's from that that we get the power of peace. For him, in the action, what he's going to do, in that exact action, is what he does to overcome the world. This world is biblically defined, as you look through the scriptures, defines this world as one kind of key term, which is death. Everything is passing away. Everything has an expiry date, has an end date. Even Jesus himself, when he came into this world and took on flesh and became a man, he had an expiry date. That is what it meant to take on flesh. He was literally coming. He was given this physical life only to realize that he was to die. Right? Jesus knew this all along, and so becoming a man meant becoming a man who would eventually die. And so Jesus here, with his final teachings, tells them exactly how to take on this peace. It is through Jesus' death and resurrection. That it is what he's about to do to overcome the world that gives us the power. That Jesus himself was going to die. That in his own death, he would show us obedience to the end. That he would show us he is the one who was appointed by God, the one who was able to save our world, to save you, to save me. And once he died, he paid that price. And he proved to us to the end his faithfulness. But in his resurrection, he shows that he overcomes the world. If this world is defined by death, then Jesus shows us that his resurrection, the ability to overcome death, is the power that we desperately need. That we can overcome death itself by what? By being in Jesus. By being in him. And so with Jesus, the power comes from his death and his resurrection. And so for ourselves, this is the message we need to constantly be telling ourselves, especially in a time like this. Especially when we're looking at the stress that we are under, the stress that we are going through. This is what you need to tell your neighbors as they are going through these stressful times as well. That we have hope, that we have peace, because Jesus has overcome the world. Look at this. Jesus was alone, but not lonely. Jesus felt fear, but was not overcome by it. Jesus was isolated, but yet one with God. Jesus was abused, but yet still was a blessing to all. And Jesus was killed, but yet he came back to life. And so in the same way, Jesus is our example. And in stressful times, we can still obey and follow after Jesus to the end. It's not just about having a peace of mind. It's about having the power to follow him, to obey God. And that is exactly what he gives us in his death and in his resurrection. And so this week, as we go through times of deep stress, I want you to come back and time again, focus on Easter. Think about Easter. Think about the leaving and the returning of Jesus. Think about the death and the resurrection. Because that is our hope. That is our power. That is what gives us peace. Jesus knew that when he was about to die, that he would come back to life. And in the same way for us, when we go through difficult times in our lives, we know, again, stress will show us our beliefs. But we know and we believe, and we need to believe more and more, that Jesus is there, that his death has done something significant to our lives. And for our neighbors too, he has done something significant for your life too. That you too can have this peace, as the Bible puts it, that surpasses all understanding. You can't even fathom, you can't even realize the peace that he gives us. And hopefully you're watching other Christians in your lives, other Christians that you may know. Watch my life, watch our lives, and hopefully this peace is not just some kind of idea in the clouds, but a tangible reality that we are able to live out. Jesus' death promises us, again, that we have connection with God. Jesus' resurrection promises us that there is hope. That there is hope to overcome. Again, we will overcome because Jesus has overcome the world. Let's pray. God, we thank you for your dear presence in our lives. We thank you that you have not left us alone in the midst of this tribulation, that you yourself have made a way, that you knew that people were going to abandon you, were going to leave you, your closest disciples were going to flee from you, and yet you still stayed faithful to the end because you believed in God the Father. And so, God, I just pray for our own lives, we would have that same trust, that same faith in you, that we would follow in your example, knowing, God, that you have given us the power from your death and your resurrection. May this week, God, everyone in our church constantly be reminded that this is where our power comes from, is from the peace that you have given us. And so I pray as well for our neighbors, that those that are stressed out, God, that they would go to you, maybe even for the first time, and ask you to come into their lives, that you would teach them and show them what it is like to have this peace. May they truly put their faith, not in us, not in things of this world, but in you, in Jesus. For in Jesus we have peace. Amen. Thank you for joining us again online. We're just so grateful that you've been able to be here, be a part of this. Again, Sunday is just the start of the week. I encourage you to stay connected with us. You can always reach out, always call, always email. We are there for you. I also want to encourage us, you'll see on the in the notes section here on the side, that there are links I just want to encourage you to go to. There is kids material for the kids in our church, or even those that aren't. Go on, just make a simple account, and each week we'll be uploading more and more content, as well as an act of worship. We continue to give, and we just ask you to continue to trust in God as we trust in God, and to give because Jesus has given to us first, and there are many options to do so online. So we thank you. We're excited for this week ahead. Lots of plans coming up for Easter. Look for a Good Friday message online, but most importantly, we look forward to joining us on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. As we see not just the church, but the neighborhood come together online and just celebrate, again, this hope that is found in Jesus' death and his resurrection. Thank you guys. We're praying for you, and we'll see you again soon.